Elizabeth Holmes convinced some of the most powerful people in America to believe in a machine that could not do what she said it could. But the strange part isn't that she lied. Criminals lie every day. The strange part is what happened to the minds of the people around her. Billionaires invested hundreds of millions of dollars. Former secretaries of state joined her board. Walgreens prepared to put Theranos inside its stores. And when an employee warned one of those board members that something was seriously wrong, the warning came from his own grandson. He still believed Elizabeth Holmes. So this story isn't only about a woman who deceived people. It's about something more unsettling. How does one person's certainty become powerful enough to override the judgment of intelligent people? And what happens inside your mind when admitting the truth becomes harder than believing the lie? In 2003, Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford at 19 and started what would become Theranos. Her promise was simple. Blood tests required needles, vials, laboratories, and waiting. Holmes promised a few drops from your fingertip. From that tiny amount of blood, Theranos claimed it could perform a wide range of medical tests, faster, cheaper, more accessible. If it worked, it was enormous. But Holmes had a problem. She needed people to believe in something most of them were unable to verify themselves. An investor might understand business. A politician might understand power. An executive might understand strategy. None of that tells you whether a blood testing machine produces clinically reliable results. So Holmes needed more than a compelling invention. She needed credibility, and she surrounded herself with it. George Shultz, former U.S. Secretary of State. Henry Kissinger, another former U.S. Secretary of State. William Perry, former Secretary of Defense. Former senators, military leaders, people whose names carried authority before Holmes entered the room. And something happens when authority surrounds a claim. The claim begins to inherit the authority. Imagine you are considering investing. You cannot personally judge the science, but George Shultz believes. Henry Kissinger believes. Wealthy investors believe. You have two possible explanations. Either all these powerful people have seen something you haven't, or they're being fooled. Which feels more likely? That question became one of Holmes's greatest advantages, because people rarely evaluate uncertainty in isolation. We look at the behavior of others, and every respected person Holmes convinced made convincing the next person easier. Soon, enormous amounts of money followed. Rupert Murdoch invested $125 million. The Walton family invested $150 million. Then Walgreens entered the story. In 2013, Theranos announced a partnership with the pharmacy giant. Now another layer of credibility appeared. If you're an investor, you see Walgreens and think, surely they checked. If you're a journalist, you see billionaires, statesmen, and Walgreens. Surely someone checked. If you're another company, you see everyone moving toward Theranos and face a different fear. What if they're right? By 2014, Theranos was valued above $9 billion. Holmes was 30. She appeared on magazine covers. She gave interviews. She stood on stages promising to transform healthcare. The black turtleneck, the Stanford dropout, the obsessive founder, the certainty. Silicon Valley had seen a version of this character before. Steve Jobs, the outsider who understood the future before everyone else. Holmes did not need to become Steve Jobs. She needed to fit a pattern people already associated with genius. And once people decide someone is exceptional, something dangerous starts happening. Ambiguity begins working in their favor. Secrecy becomes protection of intellectual property. Unusual behavior becomes evidence of genius. Extreme confidence becomes vision. Criticism becomes resistance from people who don't understand the future. The same behavior means something different once you believe the person performing it. And inside Theranos, there were reasons to doubt. The technology was struggling to fulfill the company's public promises. Theranos used conventional laboratory machines for many tests. Employees raised concerns about reliability and accuracy. One of those employees was Tyler Schultz. Tyler is important because he shows us what happens when belief meets direct evidence. He hadn't joined Theranos expecting fraud. He believed in the company too. Then he worked with the technology. And what he saw disturbed him. Quality control problems, results he believed were unreliable. A growing contradiction between the Theranos celebrated outside the laboratory and the company he saw inside it. Tyler had access to someone near the top. His grandfather, George Schultz, the former Secretary of State, Theranos board member, one of the prestigious figures whose reputation helped make Holmes credible. Tyler warned him. Think about the psychology of this moment. Your grandson worked inside the laboratory. He tells you something is wrong. The alternative is believing a young founder whose company you joined years earlier. It sounds easy from here. Believe your grandson. George continued supporting Holmes. And this is where Theranos becomes more than a story about persuasion. Because George was no longer deciding whether Elizabeth Holmes seemed trustworthy. That decision had already happened. He had joined the board, attached his name to Theranos, introduced Holmes to influential people, defended the company, invested part of his identity in being right about her. Now Tyler's warning was asking him to do something psychologically expensive: reverse himself. The first time you encounter a belief, you ask, is this true? After you have defended it, promoted it, and attached your reputation to it, another question appears. What does it say about me if I was wrong? That is cognitive dissonance. Two realities collide. I am an intelligent person with good judgment, and I might have helped legitimize a fraud. One of them has to move. Sometimes people update their beliefs. Sometimes they reinterpret the evidence. And the more you have invested, the harder retreat becomes. This is why some deceptions grow stronger after the first warning signs appear. The victim is no longer protecting only the claim. They might be protecting their previous decisions, their reputation, their relationships, their image of themselves. Holmes also controlled information aggressively. Theranos was secretive. Information inside the company was compartmentalized. Details surrounding the technology were tightly guarded. But once again, the warning sign had another interpretation. Of course, the technology is secret. It's revolutionary. Competitors would want it. Notice what has happened. The machine doesn't work as expected. It's still developing. The company hides information. It's protecting innovation. Employees raise concerns. Perhaps they don't see the whole picture. Holmes behaves differently. Visionaries often do. Powerful people believe her. They must know something. A belief becomes dangerous when contradictory evidence no longer weakens it. The contradiction becomes part of the explanation. And then something changed. Someone outside Theranos began asking questions without carrying the same psychological baggage. Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou started speaking with former employees, including Tyler Schultz. In October 2015, the Journal published an investigation challenging Theranos's claims and raising serious questions about its technology and testing. And the psychological structure around Holmes began breaking. Regulators scrutinized the company. Partners started questioning it. Walgreens eventually ended the relationship. Lawsuits followed. Theranos's valuation collapsed. In 2018, the SEC accused Holmes and Theranos's former president, Sunny Balwani, of raising more than $700 million through false and misleading claims. Theranos dissolved. In 2022, Holmes was convicted on 4 criminal counts related to defrauding investors. Now look at the story from the end. The warning signs seem obvious. A secretive company. Technology outsiders struggle to verify. Employees raising alarms. A board filled with prestige but limited relevant scientific expertise. You might think, how did they not see it? But that question is too easy. The better question is, when did they stop seeing it? Because Holmes did not have to erase every warning sign. She needed each warning sign to compete with something psychologically stronger. Authority, reputation, hope, commitment, fear of being wrong, fear of missing out, and the belief of everyone else. That is how intelligent people become vulnerable. Not because intelligence disappears, because intelligence operates on the information and assumptions available to it. And sometimes, intelligent people become skilled at defending what they already believe. That is the part of this crime that reaches beyond Elizabeth Holmes. Most people watching this will never invest £100 million in a medical startup. But you have defended a decision because admitting you were wrong felt worse. You have trusted someone more because respected people trusted them. You have doubted your own judgment because nobody else seemed concerned. You have explained away a warning sign because it conflicted with something you wanted to believe. The scale changes. The mind doesn't. And there is one thought sitting underneath the entire Theranos story. Surely someone checked. The investors could look at the board. The public could look at Walgreens. Journalists could look at the valuation. New investors could look at old investors. Everyone had someone else whose confidence felt like evidence, until confidence traveled further than verification. Elizabeth Holmes told the lie. But one person cannot create collective belief alone. Every respected person who believed made her more believable. Every person who defended an earlier decision made doubt harder. Every new signal of success made the original question seem less important. Does the machine actually work? That question should have controlled everything. Instead, people kept looking at each other for the answer. And that is the uncomfortable psychology behind Theranos. Sometimes the smartest person in the room still gets fooled, especially when everyone else in the room already looks convinced.